Good morning, Seekers. I hope you guys have had a excellent Christmas and New Year. And for the New Year of 2026, today we will be reacting to the Freak Show series. An anticipated video, I'm sure, for all of you. And today we're going to be looking at all the episodes from episode 1 all the way to the finale so that we are at peak condition to analyze each one of these characters that we have oh so loved throughout this entire series. Now, whether or not this is going to be the finale of the series in general, or the finale for the season, I'm not too sure of, but we're going to be looking at these things together, and hopefully we're going to learn something new about these characters. I've been learning a lot about Rev and Sarah, and definitely Belladonna, of course, as probably one of the more lore-heavy characters in the show. And, well, we're going to see what we can learn, honestly. And it's been a really big journey so far. Honestly, I thank all of you guys for coming on this journey with me, and hopefully we can continue on this entire situation as well. As always, go subscribe to Rick Cypher here. Turn on notifications all the time. And, well, let's get going. I'll be pausing ever so often here to take some notes on Rev as a character as well.
Mom, Dad, I'm home. Mom? Are you there? Is someone down there?
Always my favorite scene in the beginning.
Rev, honey, welcome home!
Missed you, sport.
What the hell? You're doing a resurrection ritual without me?
Language, sweetie! We're resurrecting the cat.
And you see, that's one of the first things that we learn about Rev, right? It's that Rev as a person is incredibly dependent on others. Now, not necessarily in just the general case, right? A lot of Rev's entire actions are really dependent on himself, right? He's really egocentric, as we see here. A lot of what he says to his parents right now is just like, oh, you guys are doing this without me, right? He wants to feel a sense of belonging, right? He's a huge sense of what we call FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And because of that, he just immediately is, again, lashing out, right? You guys are doing this ritual without me. Because, again, as we are going to see in this initial pilot, he is incredibly heavily focused and connected to his necromancy origins, right? He mentions that in the, I want to say, I think it's episode 5 or episode 6, the episode with Belladonna and him down here around... Yeah, this episode right here, when he gets trapped in the Monster High, episode 6. In that episode, he even tells Belladonna the same thing, right? That because he comes from a line of necromancers, there is that sense of, pridefulness within it, right? And that's something we already see here in the very beginning of the episode as well.
Again.
Seriously? Raven is dead again?
Poor Raven.
Bust this time.
Went crazy when she heard the postman coming. Tore up our good furniture.
This is the 3rd time this month.
And we're so proud of her for improving. Last time she died, we had to drive 5 miles to find all the bits of her.
Oh. Looks like she got the mail. Good girl.
This is an acceptance letter to Kincaid Academy.
Oh, he was accepted?
You hear that, honey? Our boy is gonna be studying at Cade.
What? What is this?
Well, sweetie, seeing as school is right around the corner, we didn't want you going to any old public school.
I still can't believe they stopped teaching Latin. Everyone knows a good curse needs Latin.
So, we went out of our...
And I love the continuity that they bring that back, of course, in episode number 5, with the potions as well, where Rev and Belladonna both say the same thing, that every good curse needs Latin as well. So it kind of once again shows that they're connected under that initial belief as well at the same time. It's a really good sense of continuity that refers back to this episode too.
Way to enroll you in a proper academy for someone of your... well...
unique talent.
Yes!
And that's the thing, right? When they say that, of course, now, right, for those of you that, of course, have watched the entire series so far, which if you haven't, you probably shouldn't be reacting to this one. But, again, like, one of the main things about it is that Rev has been always classified by the initial aspect of his double situation, right? We know that he is very, I don't want to say necessarily vulgar, but he definitely is very abrasive. He is very defensive and such, right? And again, like, those are personality traits, right? Those are aspects of his entire persona that he creates outwardly, right? And so what ends up happening is that he develops that kind of personality because of the fact that that is just the way that he works as a person. And so what really happens here is that you kind of have a clash of what we call like outside attributes, right? External attributes and intrapersonal attributes, right? Intrapersonally, he is somebody who is very abrasive, defensive, right? He is different from the flock because, again, as we're going to see, he tries to disassociate, disconnect, right? Act pretty much outside of the realm of everything that essentially is going on, right? And you contrast that with his physical form that we learn at the end of this pilot, right? That his physical aspect is also different, right? But also in a sense not so much so, because he's in an environment, he's in a social area that is essentially all for people that are like him, essentially, right? But again, he still clings to that human nature, as we're going to see later on.
That's it.
Oh, it's a shame Raven took so long to hack up that letter. The first day of classes is tomorrow.
We have no time to waste. Rev, sweetie, go pack your things.
His
We're
parents are
going to
always
drive you over
interesting
first
characters
thing
because,
tomorrow.
yeah, I don't even know whether or not to
Do
call
I
them, like,
have to?
necessarily really manipulative.
Don't be so
but there
dumb,
obviously
sport.
is this lack of
Cade
connection
will teach
between
you everything
themselves
you'd
and
ever
Rev,
want to know.
Necromancy, occultism, witchcraft. I can think of nothing better for you.
We should go tell the neighbors the good news.
Yes, we should.
Cade, huh? How bad could it possibly be?
Oh my god. It was
So,
us once.
this is Cade Academy, huh? My parents definitely spoke highly of it. Well, let's see what it's like.
What do you think you're looking at, dweeb?
Nothing.
Who gave you permission to speak, idiot? Go throw yourself in a locker! Hey, loser! Give me your homework to copy off now!
What the... Okay. That was sufficiently
I like how the first two people that Rev sees
strange.
in the school environment is God, I always forget all their names. I should have written them down ahead of time. But yeah, like, he sees the werewolf guy and, the ghost guy, right? And, like, they don't really have, I would say, really that much of a narrative significance, but they're there to mostly just showcase, what the school life is, right? The typical nerd and the jock, right? Like, those labels essentially categorize us into these little groups, right, that have social commonality. But, like, here, Rev is just immediately like, okay, well, that's weird, right? But it's nothing different, right? He expects this to be a typical, private or public school, right? We know that Cade is fairly highly sought after at the same time, right? I'm assuming that they don't say that it's for monsters, right? Though, again, Rev is, a necromancer, so it's not like he's really that surprised by everything around them, right? He even says so in episode 7, I believe, when he's talking to Lovecraft toward the end. But, like, it's entirely like that as well, right? Where he expects something to happen, and, expectation versus reality can lead to extreme reactions, as we're going to see soon here as well.
What the huh?
Ow. What the hell? Ow. Ow. What the hell?
Don't you see the pillar?
Let me see if I can
literally right there.
Huh? Oh. Thanks. Ow. Ow.
Okay, you know what? Huh?
Let's try this one. Artibus.
And they even bring,
Interesting.
They even bring up later on.
Let's try
episode
another.
5.
No, I'm not being vaporized next. What the heck? What's wrong with that girl? And that other stupid idiot that kept running into the pillars, and that wolf guy, and... this isn't some private school. This is some kind of haven for delinquents and rejects.
I totally knew it!
What?
Walking around with that look on your face. I knew I didn't recognize you. You're new around here, aren't you? Let me be the first to say it. Welcome to the Freak Show.
Who the hell are you?
Name's Mark Dracula. That's right. You're looking at the son of Count Dracula himself. Ever heard of him? Well, he's kind of a big deal, you hear? Most powerful vampire in history. So obviously that makes me a vampire too. Don't worry though, I don't go around biting strangers.
Alright, this is a mistake.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't belong here.
Buddy, mistakes happen, but no one ends up at Cade by accident.
I'm human.
Whoa, that's so freaking cool!
You're missing the point!
Dude, a human at Cade?
So we can stop here for right now. But yeah, like again, the first time we see him react to this situation, right, with Rev, he shows an outward disapproval, right? Immediately he disconnects himself from everyone else, right? He's like, oh, this is a school for delinquents, rejects, right? Everything that he is not, right? If he was, then he would say like, oh, this is the perfect place for me, right? But he doesn't, right? He disconnects from everyone else because he's in a situation that, he did not ask to be put in, right? If he came here, like willingly, like he purposefully, completed an application or whatever the case is, right? If that ended up happening, then I would even say that he would create an even stronger reaction to any given situation that's occurring around him, right? There's a strong external disconnect from everything that's going on around him in general, right? And then here comes Mark, right? Somebody who, again, like I haven't made a video on yet, but he's really someone who has like an outward positive personality, right? He is extremely welcoming. We immediately know that he is somebody who is of the student body, right? He immediately can tell that Rev is someone new, right? He's not there. He hasn't seen his face before. He welcomes him inside, right? And even when Rev says that he's human, unlike a lot of other people that we're going to see in this pilot by itself, he doesn't disbelieve Rev. He doesn't mock Rev or say like, oh, you're crazy. He immediately is welcoming of that idea, right? Mark is a very open-minded individual. And that's kind of what makes him different from Rev, right? Rev, as we saw here, is really dependent on others, which we are going to see on in a lot of Mark's case as well, right? But Mark here is immediately welcoming, right? He's open-minded, right? And he is, in a sense, I would say also a bit gullible, because he immediately doesn't really, try to change a lot of the perceptions that Rev has, right? He's immediately welcoming of any perception because, he has no reason to disbelieve Rev at this point in time, right? He's entirely in a position where, that is his main entire, goal, right? Is to ensure that everyone around him pretty much feels as welcoming as possible. And that's kind of where a lot of those mentalities really come from in personalities like Mark's as well in the world, right? Is that it's a person who's very, obviously very extroverted, right? But, also somebody who kind of clashes with those that want to be more isolated, right? I think it's safe to say that Bella and Mark are both very introverted people. I would even say Sarah is as well. And Mark is kind of where that black sheep of the group is, which, as we're going to see later on in episode number 4, I believe, that is going to be something that's going to come back into play as well at the same time. So, but like right now, we already saw that, like, yeah, this thing here, right? Like a human in Cade, right? Maybe you're right. I've definitely never seen a human before, right? He's not denying it, right? But again, like, he's not necessarily also just agreeing with it completely, right? Even as gullible as we know that he will be later on in episode 7 as well, But he's also somebody who's very, very...
Maybe you're right. I've definitely never seen a human here before. Hey, how about I take you up to the principal? I bet she'd be able to clear this whole thing up.
Again, offering assistance.
Fine. Just hurry up and help me get out of here.
Sure thing, bud. Right this way.
And it's fascinating as well because of the fact that we know that, especially now in the series, Rev is just immediately disconnecting from Mark every time Mark asks to help him, to want to hang out, everything in between, right? And it's almost like they took the continuity of Mark constantly being ignored throughout a lot of these episodes. He's probably the least interactive person with Rev, minus this first episode. Because of the fact that he kind of just gets shoved to the side, right? And we know that he has his own kind of family drama going on. But it is interesting how here, of course, Rev is just immediately like, okay, fine, whatever, right? Take me to the principal so I can get out of here, right? Again, this makes sense, right? Rev is an endeavor-seeking person, right? He has a goal that he needs to reach, and so to reach that goal, he immediately entrusts his, I wouldn't necessarily really say safety, but definitely like he entrusts his lack of direction, and he gives it to somebody who already has that information, right? That makes sense for Rev as a character. Rev is really, what's the word? He's very adaptable in any given situation, right? And I think that is going to be true for, of course, an emotional level, where we're going to see later on that he adapts quite fondly to any situation by essentially choosing whatever he can to essentially just help with any given problem and conflict that he comes across as well. He's a very hands-on approach kind of person, but again, he uses communication here to also just mitigate, like, okay, I'm putting my trust on you currently, bring me out of this place, and I think that is essentially one of the major things about Rev as a person that's always been really interesting as well, right? He isn't, I wouldn't necessarily say, like, incredibly trusting. We said before, like, dependent on others, right? I'm actually going to change that because I think it actually is more so that he is independent, but he does have a fear of missing out, right? Because he's definitely a person who needs to be involved with everything. Here, he's in an incredibly foreign situation, so he's not going to be as entrusting towards others. He's going to be more so in that level of, like, get me out, I don't want to be here, right?
Fine, whatever gets me out of the school.
It should be just around this corner, and here it is. All right, good luck.
You're not coming?
No.
Right?
Fine, whatever.
And that's the part that's surprising, right? It's like, oh, well, if Mark is so welcoming, if Mark is so open-minded and, I would say even carefree, but if he's somebody who's just that much of a, like, sweetheart, that much of a really, really great person, why did he, why just leave? Well, I think, of course, we don't know a lot of the characters' reactions or opinions of Viviana, really. Like, we see Sarah kind of talk about her within, of course, episode, I want to say 5? I think it's 5. With the escaping from the tension with Sarah, right? Where, Sarah already has an opinion of Viviana as a person, which we're about to see Viviana herself. But, again, like, it makes so much sense because we, now after watching, of course, episode 7, we know exactly who Viviana is, right? And that changes the context of this entire scene because it makes so much sense, but it also asks a lot, it also constructs a lot of questioning, right? But we are going to see that here. But, of course, Mark running away, he just met this person, right? He's a very communicative person, as we said, right? So he's very connected with those around him, really emotionally charged. But, again, he's not without his own kind of sense of, survivability as well. As much as you can kind of claim that with Viviana in general at the same time, right? But it makes a lot of sense as well that you just immediately come into the situation already knowing what it is at the same time.
I'll just sort this out myself. So that must be the principal.
So, you must be the new student. A pleasure, I'm sure.
No. Wrong.
Oh?
I don't belong here.
I've heard that countless times throughout my many years as head of the school. Not once does it get old. So, pray tell, why don't you belong here?
I'm human.
How amusing. I'm afraid to say, Mr. Vennet, but there are no humans at my school. The Kincaid Academy for Deviants and Exiles is for monsters only, not humans.
Then you made a mistake.
Mr. Vennet, my name is Viviana Kincaid. Kincaid, as in the same Kincaid this school is named after. In all my centuries of teaching, I have never made a mistake. You belong at this school. If I were you, I would get used to it.
So, Viviana has always been an interesting character. From the very beginning, we were kind of introduced to her as what we would really classify as the overarching antagonist of the situation. Minus what we are going to see later on in episode 4 in the... I believe it was episode 4, episode 3, actually, here. It's my favorite episode, actually. Episode 3. As we're going to see in episode 3 as well, with the Void Creature, right, which we can more so classify as more of a villain than an antagonist, right? We learn a bit more about him as well in episode 6. But Viviana has always been an interesting character, right? Again, spoiler alert if you haven't watched all the way up to episode 7 yet, but in that episode we learned that Viviana is this kind of, almost omnipresent kind of force, right? She, exists in, past, present, future, right? She can see everything that's going to happen. She knows everything that has happened. She's been around probably since the beginning of the universe. I believe she even says that herself as well. And yet, here she has this entire line of reasoning, right? That she has never really made a mistake, right? In all her years of teaching, she is somebody who is very self-driven, right? She is very straightforward in her way of thinking, right? She immediately finds Rev's confusion amusing, right? Rev is like, I don't belong here, I am human. She's like, oh, well, everyone says that, right? I have never gotten tired of hearing that. Now, that can mean many things, of course. First and foremost, it could just mean what we would normally expect, right? That there are other students that have said the same thing. However, that can also mean that she's also heard Rev say this so many times in the future that it never gets old to her as well. Again, very big questioning. And I don't know if in the new episode we're going to see a bit more about her to the point of like, oh, we understand exactly how she thinks, how she acts, everything in between as well. Because we learned a lot about her in episode 7. In fact, the matter being that she is cursed to carry out the world as it is, right? There's no deviating from what has to happen, right? And of course, that's what differentiates her and Rev, right? Is that Rev breaks through the situation that he finds himself in, right? It's an anger-led mentality as well, right? And so what ends up happening is that you have Viviana here as somebody who is just immediately telling him that, like, no, I am right, you are not, right? Both characters have a sense of almost grandiosity towards a lot of their personalities, right? And Viviana is immediately in a situation where she places herself ahead of him, right? She is like, I am the authority figure. I am the principal of this academy that you stepped into, right? As Rev says later on, his life ended by the moment that he stepped, through those doors. And here we see her kind of cementing that idea, right? You are now in my location, right? You are now in my social area, right? I have control over the situation, and as we're going to see, people have to show respect to her, right? Whether it's a more Machiavellian kind of structure of, being within the school, we don't really know, right? We know that Wendy is freaked out over her, which is saying something very big about who Viviana is as a person, right? We know that Sarah doesn't really, I wouldn't necessarily say that she fears her, but she definitely has like a cynical perspective of trying to go past her at the same time. Right. Belladonna kind of just follows through with the rules, but that's kind of just who she is as a person. She's a law-abiding kind of individual, right? So it's not really that much of a surprise when, if Viviana did show up, right, and something happened, she'd be like, oh no, we gotta follow the rules, right? And Mark, we don't really know too much about it, but we know from the very scene before this one that, yeah, he's probably terrified of just the principal just as an authoritarian kind of figure in general, right? But it makes sense here. But that's also a really interesting thing. I have never made a mistake, as she says right here. it's all about a sense of control, right? I think it's a sense of gaining control over the situation that you're within as well, right? And I think that's always been a really interesting situation to really kind of more so be within than not as well at the same time.
But
that's enough, Mr. Bennett. I have a school to run, so I'll make this quick. These are for you.
What the?
And again, like immediately categorizing and classifying him into a situation where now he fits the mold of her social area.
A dorm key? What is
uniform,
this?
Gives him a schedule, everything in between.
What are these classes?
Because again, like that's just her way of essentially, working alongside this entire situation as well.
What's Rehabilitation 101?
Cade was established to rehabilitate monsters so they may live amongst
humans, right? And that's the whole entire thing, right? Is that she creates this entire situation where it helps others.
Class is mandatory,
right? But again, like
I'm
it's
already
not really
human.
Like it's a choice,
I don't need
right?
to be rehabilitated.
Mandatory, so there's really nothing that can.
That's the bell.
That can really classify him as anything besides a student in her academy.
I'm not going to class.
Right?
I don't belong here. Whatever. I'll just get out of the school myself. They can't keep me here. So how do I do that? Well, beginner's alchemy is up, right? I bet I can make something to help there. Okay, fine. I'll play ball for now. Okay, this should be alchemy, I guess.
Hey, Wendy, can I sit here?
Seat's already taken, loser.
Oh, that's chill. I'll just sit on the floor.
Okay, whatever.
So this is the first time that we meet Wendy, right? Wendy Indigo herself. She's obviously the next person that we're going to make a video on later on down the line. But what's interesting about her is that she's also in a perception of, she fits in the label of the typical bully, right? She immediately starts by being like, no, this is my seat, you can't have it, right? So Wendy is a very interesting character for as little as we actually do see her in the series, besides any high emotional points as well. Again, one of my favorite scenes with her definitely has to be episode 7. Really, really amazing stuff. But it makes sense here as well because she's really someone who situates herself as a position of power as well, similar to Viviana as well. But she's really in a position where she is incredibly rigid, right? She holds a rigid structure of control and authority beyond anyone else, right? And so she already immediately cements a sense of control, right? She is someone who is, of course, condescending towards others, right? She sees herself as a person who has no real, gain, right? No real social capital to gain from engaging with more pleasantries, right? And again, it's not really something that you can just say like, oh, well, that's fine, right? Because it's something that happens quite often, right? No, it's like you're in a position where you're in a school setting, right? And you're expected to follow certain things. But that's actually the thing that makes Cade really different from like any other technical setting within a school environment, is that there really is no sense of moral pleasantries, right? Which is ironic since we do have episode 5 with morality and stuff. But it's weird because of the fact, or episode 4, sorry, because of the fact that nobody in the school, I would say teachers, staff, students, everyone in between, nobody minus probably Lovecraft, has a sense of moral connection, right, between one another. There's no moral dynamics, right? Everyone's kind of left to their own devices. When Rev gets trapped in the mirror dimension in episode 3, and, he asks for Bella, he asks Bella for help, right? Of course, they don't really know each other at this point in time, but at least to an extreme degree. But she immediately just calls the person who gets stuck there an idiot, right? Sarah is just completely detached. She doesn't care about anything in general, right? And that's one of the things about Cade that we kind of have to remember, right? Is that Cade is made for monsters and deviance, right? As she says, right? And this equates to a initial lack of morality and social dynamics that foster positive attributes. That's one of the major things that we kind of have to remember here as well, right? Is that Cade's entire situation is for fostering people who already are, again, outside of that chain of what they're supposed to do, right? They are kind of just broken off immediately from, what they're really meant to be like, right? Because again, that's the entire situation surrounding, who Viviana is as a person, right? She's somebody who wants to give people this kind of second chance at life as well, right? And so you kind of put that into that entire perspective at the same time, because that's entirely who she is as a person, right? But it's still really interesting to kind of make that note too, because that it kind of already shows us that, like, okay, well, these people aren't going to be like human beings, right? Human beings are all about morality, about emotional emotional standards and everything. But again, that's not who Rev is. That's not who Bella is. That's definitely not who Sarah is, right? So there's kind of an almost sense of understanding, especially with like Wendy's case, right? But again, like we're people, right? Us, the viewers, we're humans. We react to things in a human manner, right? We have our sense of moral dilemmas and moral responsibilities, right? Moral requirements, as I call them. And so because of that, we already can tell that, like, oh, well, Wendy is a bully because she goes against what we would normally say is appropriate in a school setting, right? So again, like, it's a very, very interesting dynamic to say the least as well. Oh, and I should make a note that that's kind of what differentiates Freak Show from like something else like Monster High, which of course is where a lot of inspiration really comes from. I would even add on like Owl House, for example, with the Screaming Bell thing, because that's a very Owl House coded approach to the situation, right? But again, that's what makes it different, right? So again, it's a very, very interesting comparison to really make, right? But let's continue.
Guess this is the only seat left. Just take this one.
Oh, great heavens. Whole lot of you look like troublemakers. Oh well, I'll just turn you all into toads if you disrupt my class. That's not a joke, by the way. You youngins never take your elders seriously these days. Anyway, I'm your alchemy professor this year, Ms. Baba Yaga. I'm not interested in getting to know your names. If I do, it's either because you're a great student or a very, very bad one. So, let's not waste time, alright? I need a good measure of your skills today, to see who needs extra help when it comes to brewing. You'll all be working with a partner to brew. Open up our textbooks. It's in Chapter 1. The simple but effective cure for acne. If you kids need any help, just ask. And you better get along with your partner. You'll be stuck with them for the rest of the semester.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
A lot of what we are
describe what
character is that they're in a situation that, again, as we just
Is it
said,
too
right? They don't
late
want
to ask if I can work alone?
Right? And that's the thing about Belladonna, right? Is that we already know she's a very isolating person, similar to Rev, right? So of course, at the prospect of working at, in a project by, with another person, that's a nightmare situation, right? And Rev, as we're going to see, is also in that same approach at the same time.
I would also prefer that.
Yeah, and again, they're both in an entire situation.
Look, just don't jeopardize my grade, and we'll get along fine, okay?
You think this is my first time brewing?
It isn't?
I've been crafting elixirs since I was 12. This is child's play.
You do seem more put together than half the student body.
Right? And again, like, that's a very, very interesting statement to really make, right? But that immediately tells us that Bella has standards, right? She standardizes many of, like, the approaches that, you know, comes into, like, another person's sense of potential, right? She has standards towards those that carry high potential. Right? She's not going to waste her time with somebody who is clearly not going to put any thought, any seriousness into the work that, you know, she essentially does, right? She holds a strong sense of connection with those that can indeed prove that they are going to, in fact, do the work and do it right. And so because of that, she immediately is in that entire state of recognition, right? As she says, right, he seems far more put together than anyone else. With Rev's case, of course, we immediately see that sense of independency here, but we also see that he has a strong sense of egoism, right? Now, the thing about ego is that, of course, you can look at it through different terminologies and stuff. In psychology, ego is typically used as a secondary middle ground starting point. We have the id, the ego, and the superego through the development stages of a person throughout their life, right? Through an ego perspective, we kind of see a sense of right and wrong. We know what is essentially going to get us into trouble and what is not. Superego is a lot more of a socially recognized approach where we know where we are in society in general, and from that we're able to make proper decisions because of that. And so here we essentially already have a sense of perception, right? We know where we are, we know who we're compared to, right? And so because of that, you already have that entire perspective, right? Rev only speaks out against being called, you know, like anybody else, right? Being called being more so, I would say, minimized into being a common person, right? And because, you know, Rev isn't a common person, right? He studies, he puts in the hard work. That part is true. He's not being just egoistic for the sake of itself. He can back up that claim, right? We've seen from the beginning of the episode that he is in a necromancy-based environment, right? Do we see him do magic? Well, not really yet, right? But we know that he has some sense of presence and an anchoring of his social setting, right? Where he stands in any social setting entirely. And so because of that, he develops into a state of understanding where everything is, right? And so here we essentially already have a state for Belladonna where it also is a state of independence. Excuse me. Because again, just like Rev, she holds those entire standards as well, right? So let's actually just mark it in a list as well. Here might make things a bit easier for us. And again, like, that makes sense, right? Both of them are, of course, you know, as we call them, like two peas in the same pod kind of deal, right? And again, they have mirrored personalities. In fact, that's what makes them so similar, right? And so that's why they get along so well, because both of them have a similar kind of perspective, right? They have a sense of independence, right? They have hard work, right? Because of everything else, right? If we were to label Bella in the state of, like, the high school personality types and stuff, of course, she is the I wouldn't necessarily really say the nerdy girl, but she definitely is the teacher's pet, right? To the point where, like, yeah, that makes the most amount of sense, right? It's entirely all about what she can essentially, you know, do versus anything else, right? And so she already has those entire perspectives of everything else as well, right? And so because her standards are so high towards a person with potential, right, that immediately challenges Rev's approach, right? Are you going to be like everyone else, or are you going to be like something that is entirely different, right? And that's kind of where you kind of have this state of awareness, right? That no matter what really happens, Bella's entire independence matches Rev's one as well, right? But because both of them have a state of independence, working together is not going to be something that, they can carry, right? And, because of everything that goes on there, it allows her to really rectify that entire idea at the same time, right? No matter what really happens, she's going to be in a position where she has to first know a person before choosing whether or not she can care for them as well. So let's continue.
That's because I don't belong here.
Okay, you're coming on a little strong with the elitism.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? What's the difference between elitism and egoism, right? Well, elitism is more so a sense of superiority towards those around you, right? Which, yes, egoism can be a similar property too, but egoism is more of the sense of self, right? It's an intrapersonal attribute that I am better than everyone else, right? But that can be more so an internal personality type, right? Versus elitism, which is more so open, it's open between an interpersonal attribute that you share among those around you, right? But, it is a fun little kind of nod towards the fact that, it's entirely there. But again, Bella is no stranger to being blunt and honest, right? Similar to Sarah, as we're going to see, but she is also somebody who knows who she is, right? She knows her place in the social structure, and so because of that, she's able to call out somebody else, right? It's like, whoa, right? You're not gonna tell me that you're that you're human, right? Because that's the thing, right? This school, as we know, is made to rehabilitate. I was gonna say rehabilitate sinners. No, that's a different show. But no, it's used to rehabilitate the monsters and deviants of the monster world and the folkloric creatures into the human society, right? Which immediately puts humanity as this kind of staple of wanting to be, right? Puts it as this kind of pedestal that these monsters are supposed to reach, right? That you can never be human until you learn how to care, until you learn how to be compassionate. And so, of course, to call yourself human is just to say, oh, I am God, right? Or I am a God. I am a godly figure because I have morality and I have a sense of human nature within my blood and my body, right? And again, it's an entire situation that revolves around what it really means to be put into a situation where you have no control, right? And we're going to see that after this fact, Rev is not really human. Right? He's not really human, right? He is like the rest, right? He's no longer, that sense of independence is shifted away, right? And of course, who's going to be with him in the hallway in that scene? Well, the girl he's talking to right now. So.
Listen, let's just get this assignment done. I'm not looking to let down my teacher on the first day. And since we're working together, I'm Belladonna.
Which took me forever to realize that is a poisonous plant.
Well, Rev, go grab the ingredients.
It makes sense with the whole
I'll get the cauldron ready.
Yeah, that one definitely makes the most amount of sense as well. With the naming schemes and everything.
Okay, fine.
I really love when a show does that.
Don't mess it up.
Revenant, and stuff like that. Really.
Excuse me.
Nice situation.
Cure for acne,
right?
spearmint
leaf,
raspberry, rose petals, nettle, oat straw. So meticulous.
Right? But if you already know
whatever, well, I'm not grabbing this. Instead, I think what I need to blow this trash place is a potion of flight. And for that, I will almost certainly need a rabbit's foot, a feather, and I think a little bit of glowstone dust just to add a kick. Now, let's just put it all together. So first goes in the feather for the flight property, and now a rabbit's foot to add a little spring in my step, and now lastly for the final ingredient.
What the hell are you doing?
What does it look like? I'm brewing a potion.
Not the right potion. This looks like the ingredients for a potion of flight.
You'd be right.
No. Why are you making that?
So I can get out of here.
You're trying to skip class?
In a way, yes.
You delinquent!
Right, delinquent, right? He's a deviant, right? In a social setting, he's no different from the monsters.
I'm taking the cauldron.
No!
Hey! Hand it over, you little miscreant!
And again, condescending standard, right? She immediately is putting him in a position where it's you aren't. any different from, you know, any other monster.
Earn Roblox digital gift cards with Microsoft Rewards.
That's kind of what makes him, in a perspective, like far more.
If he keeps shaking it like that, it's gonna.
Ah! What the hell? Which one of you pathetic brats did this?
Don't look at me.
Look at what you did!
What I did? It's not my fault you were standing there.
Not your fault! I'm freaking pink!
Yeah, and it's not your color.
So this is an interesting situation, right? This is one of the first times that Rev and Wendy have had an interaction, right? And, you know, I've seen a lot of, like, discussion in the comments, especially during episode 5, where it's that, like, oh, well, Wendy is a jerk, right? She is a bully, she is cruel, she does not care for others. And that is true, right? Fact of the matter being that any incident that we see in the future between them, Wendy typically is the one to respond, even if it is something that is minute. Wendy is a person that holds a strong sense of control, as we saw here, right? She's immense a sense of control within the social environment, right? It's not like, you know, the Regina George of the high school thing, right? She's obviously not that, but she is someone who is already known for being, like, a bit of a jerk-like person, right? And that's why I'm excited to see what she's like when we are going to see the when we are going to see her sense of awareness towards Rev's own place in the actual school hierarchy, right? But she's condescending towards others, as we saw here, right? Fact of the matter being, interestingly enough, Bella immediately places the blame on Rev, right? Now, for all intents and purposes, that is fair, right? He grabs ingredients, changes the potion, she tries to grab the cauldron. Rev, of course, wanting to leave, you know, drags it back, right? But again, the cauldron could not have been spilled were it to just be Rev by himself, nor Bella by herself, right? But there is this, because of her sense of independence, she is, you know, unwilling to be punished for anything at all, right? Because again, she has those standards for herself, right? She carries potential, therefore she has a higher standards for what she is as a person, right? Who she is as a person, I should say. And so because of that, right, she disconnects from others, right? And I would say others' responsibility and their sense of action, right? Now, as I said, right, to be fair, this was not, you know, her own entire doing, right? If the potion was followed correctly, he would have continued by normally as well. But because of that, yeah, she immediately places the blame on Rev. Like, don't look at me, right? It's you know, it's the guy that's next to me. Now, for Wendy, this is one of those moments where you can definitely feel bad for her, right? She is walking, right? And, you know, she happens to be there, right? And Rev even says, like, you know, you shouldn't, you know, it's your, you know, you should not have been standing there. It's not my fault you were standing there. Technically speaking, she wasn't, right? She was moving from one location to the other. But again, we already know that Mark is, Merev, sorry, is somebody who is immediately in a position of, you know, being independent like Bella, right? So he's immediately like, oh, well, it's not my fault, right? You're there, right? As we're saying here, right? Like, immediately, like, right after her saying, like, hey, yeah, you turned me pink with your potion, right? He immediately says, like, oh, yeah, it's not your color, right? She's being humiliated, right? She feels embarrassed, right? Which, you know, makes sense. Most bullies are all about, what do other people think of me, right? What is everyone constantly imagining about me at the same time, right? So she clearly has a sense of identity, fragility, right? Her sense of belonging in the school is tied to her sense of uncaredness, right? She's immediately in a position where she doesn't care who you are, what you are, where you came from. No, for her, it's all about, I am not your friend. I am out here to interact with you, right? I am in my own safe bubble, where just like Viviana, she holds her own authority, right? And because that's the separate thing, is that, and we're going to see Wendy throughout this entire situation, right? We are going to see that she is not in a position where she interacts with other people, right? Because that isn't Wendy's entire goal in mind, right? Is that she places herself in a position where there is no need to interact with others. When she's eating lunch, she's eating particularly by herself, right? When she's doing something else, by herself, right? But again, as we're going to see, because Rev is so uncaring about what happens to her, because her identity is so fragile, right? She sees him as a threat, right? A threat to herself, right? If he can humiliate me with this, then what else can this Rev fella do, right? He's immediately getting into trouble, and for her, she just wants to be left alone, right? So again, it is immediately clear that she places herself in a bubble of control, and also disconnects from others. Does she have a sense of independence? Yes, right? But again, it's not to the extreme end of Bella or Mark or Rev as well. Oh my god. But yeah, like, it makes sense why she is so upset here. I think most people would be upset. Just gonna put that out there. I think most people would be upset over this whole entire thing. So, where does that put Wendy, right? Well, she is somebody who is understandably very controlling of the situation around her that best benefits herself. So we're going to see what happens after this then.
Oh, you don't know the pain you signed up for, punk!
Again, actions have consequences.
You're dead! Ah!
That's fair. And of course, what happens? Turns into a frog. Wow.
I
crazy.
warned you, didn't I?
Crazy.
Oh, these kids never listen.
And that's what we said, right? So the school has a lack of moral standards, right? Whenever something bad happens, bam, turn into a frog, right?
We'll finish
bam,
up
be
tomorrow.
violent, be forceful, be
For now, everyone, clear out.
You know?
While I clean up.
And, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's entirely like that.
Got my eye on you, boy. I don't tolerate troublemakers. You hear?
And again, like, they're putting in rules and regulations. Right,
You're gonna pay for this, you worthless rat! Watch your back!
Now that disaster's out of the way, what do I have next?
Hey, well, what happens to him? Well, he cements himself
101?
into a situation where now he
Screw
has
that.
a bad
I'm just gonna
reputation.
go walk out the front
and now
door.
he has,
I'm done
an
here.
enemy, which, very, very bad stuff.
Going somewhere?
Class.
I know your schedule, Mr. Vennet, and I believe rehabilitation.
Right, and this is just Viviana just again cementing her own power over him as well.
Would you?
Right, but it makes sense, at the same time, right? She's entirely there.
It would do you well to cease this fruitless endeavor sooner than later. It's pointless to try leaving Cade. No student ever succeeds.
Maybe I'll be the first.
No, you won't.
She knows this,
It seems you're having trouble
that's
finding
why
your next
she's
class.
in a position where it's like, yeah, no, you
Allow
can't,
me
right?
to help you.
In fact, not even that he won't be able to, right? As she says, right, the one thing that is certain is the future, right? And that's Viviana's whole entire characterization, right? She is so certain of what is going to happen that there is no changing what is going to occur, right? Which is that no matter what he does, he's going to do something that is going to positively upset
hate this school!
Cade University.
Quiet in the back. Welcome, monstrosities and incomprehensible entities alike. I am Professor Lovecraft. This is Rehabilitation 101. I will be your teacher this year.
Lovecraft? Like H.P. Lovecraft?
Unlike the lot of you, I've spent many of my years in the human world. I had a pen name by which I authored countless books describing our world in human terms. The humans regard my texts as fiction, which, as you will learn, is for the best. Humans can't handle the true nature of this world.
Tell me about it.
Which that line is also a bit of an interesting one, because that, is it telling that Rev himself can't handle that? Or is he saying that, like, oh, because he also knows about the monstrosities of the world, he knows that human beings also wouldn't be able to handle that, with him, again, being an exception to that rule? I don't really know, right? I think either or would be true, I think, right? But again, like, which one matches his personality the most? Well, probably the latter, right? Because I don't think he would really, put himself in a position where he would, talk negatively about himself, right? I don't think it really happens until far later on in the series so far, right? But, it's an entire situation that, revolves around the, standardization of what it really means to be part of that entire circumstance, right? So again, like, it's a very, very, interesting connection to really have at the same time. So yeah. But, I think of it as just a level of intrigue that essentially comes with this entire classroom. Because I think we see probably the most of Lovecraft's classroom throughout the series so far, which makes sense, right? The entire point of, I think, one of the major themes of this show, right? Which, let's write it down here as well. But I think one of the major themes of Freak Show is redemption, self-love, change, obviously, and I would even say open-mindedness. Now, open-mindedness is always going to be an interesting one, because it's all about, what can we do to show that we care, right, for others around us at the same time, But, like, because those are some of the major themes that, is all about this entire series, it situates itself into a position where it makes sense. Lovecraft's class is going to be the major kind of setting that we find ourselves within, because it's all about learning to be a better person, which, again, we know that, Rev has to go through that development, right? We already know right now that he's put in a position that is uncomfortable, right? That is, in a sense, understandable, right, at the same time. And so because of that, it puts us in a situation where we are in a position to feel bad for him, just as much as we feel bad for Wendy, honestly. And so because of that entire scenario, it really allows him to develop as a character and as a person, right? We have programs like those in prison environments as well, right? Rehabilitation to become a better person in society, right? And so because of that, it develops itself into a scenario where that is our main way of dealing with things as well. As it says here, right? To live in peace, we must learn to live with these humans, right? And in a sense, I think that has a lot to do with a lot of what Rev's character is as a person.
However,
right?
to live in
that
peace,
kind of
we must learn to live with these
right?
humans,
His
and
nurture
in such a way that they may never know our true nature.
To be seen
over
as
the
someone who's
semester,
compassionate,
you
right?
will all learn to be proper humans.
That is how his
By the
parents
time
are.
you graduate Cade,
you
should be fully equipped to live among them in
And so
secrecy.
that's exactly how he kind of
To
illustrates.
begin our first lesson, I want you all to turn to the monster at your side and greet them. A human courtesy. Don't be shy. And no biting, or you'll be spending your first week of school in detention.
Okay.
The girl, the goat, Sarah.
Not much of a talker, are you?
No.
Fine by me. But I'm not looking to end up in detention.
Understandable. My name is Seraphim.
Rev Venet. I'm human.
Oh. Was that a joke?
Nope.
But I like how she even takes that small moment, again, with the eyes just kind of being like, oh. You know? It's like, alright. But then immediately she's like, okay, is that supposed to be a joke or something? Again, she doesn't take it seriously because she couldn't care less, right? She's, again, very much disconnected, more than any of the characters that we've said so far, from everything, right? That is Sarah's whole entire thing, right? She is monotone. She is, pretty calm for a person, right? She doesn't necessarily behave in a way that one would call talkative, as he says, right? But also very social. She's, in fact, quite the opposite of that.
Oh. Was that a joke?
Nope. Not even a little.
Why are you here?
A disastrous series of unfortunate events. I hate it here.
Oh, me too.
You do?
Mm-hmm. But leaving is futile, so...
Right, and so that's kind of the question, right? Is Sarah, now that we've already seen a few lines of hers, right? Is Sarah nihilistic, right? I don't really think so, because of the fact that were this to be just a normal series in the real world, right? Or like in an urban setting, essentially, which they go to afterwards. But I digress. That if this were to just be a normal story without any of the folkloric or fantasy elements or whatever the case is, would she be considered nihilistic? Probably, right? But I think that she is fairly realistic. She knows exactly what it is that they're fighting. She knows that Viviana cannot be beat, right? That she holds immense amount of powers, and that she cannot leave the school, right? Now, again, has she tried? Probably not. We know that she skips classes, as we're going to see afterwards here too, but she's not really in a position where she would be the type to consistently try, unlike Rev, right? Which, becomes one of the major aspects of their dynamic in episode number 3. So, again, very, very interesting connections that are really, held on to there as well, right? But she is fairly realistic because of the fact she knows that, like, okay, well, things can't occur in that entire instance. Even when she helps them later on, that's still her stance, right? Now, is she cynical? It's a bit more of like an interesting dynamic to really, hold on to as well, right? Because I don't think cynicism in this case is the best way to really describe what she really is, right? Because, cynicism in general, you don't really trust another person's motives, their beliefs, right? And, because again, you essentially hold a belief, if you're a cynic, right? You hold a belief that, like, everyone is driven by their own, motivations, their own self-interest and greed and everything else in general, right? And kind of have a pessimistic view of humanity. But, again, like, that's not really her entire belief system, right? We know later on that her entire backstory, as vague as they may be, is not really from a lack of trust, probably more so from a sense of boredom as well, right? And again, just like Mark, right? Just like Mark, she questions if he's joking. Immediately afterwards, she says he's not. She doesn't question anymore, right? She's like, okay, well, why are you here, right? Again, immediately believing it. Is it true or not? She doesn't know. She couldn't care, right? She could not care less, right? If Belladonna was convinced about it, she would be questioning the entire structure of things, right? Mark knows that it doesn't matter, if it's true or not. All he knows is that, like, oh, that's cool, right? Yes, somebody different, right? That means new best friend alert, right? With Wendy, as we're going to see, she responds violently at the end of this episode, knowing that that is true, that he was, that he is a human, right? Or at least through her belief that he is a human, immediately gives her the chance to kill him, right? Because again, that's how communication is had in this entire structure, right, of Cade Academy. So again, very, very interesting dynamic to really have as well, because it makes the most amount of sense, right? And so because of that, you kind of develop this kind of way of thinking where it's like, okay, all right, sure, why not? why not believe that he is human, right? So that is essentially what Sarah follows through with, right? She has no reason to believe that it's true or not. But does it really, does she lose anything from believing it? Not really. Not really. She has all the time in the world. So even time is something that she does not have, to lose, essentially,
Oh, here I remain.
You've tried leaving already?
No, not really.
Yeah, she never tried doing it. Inaction is Sarah's
to leave
forte.
I guess.
Some action of a template to really kind of describe what she is as a person, right?
Then let's get out of here.
She wants to leave, right? Why not, right? Just like with Rev, she feels as though not really that she doesn't belong here, but like being in this location is for her a waste of time, right? She didn't change. She hasn't changed for hundreds of years that she's been in this academy. So it makes no difference where she's going to be, right? And again, like their position, right? Her position is all the way at the top of this classroom. Again, isolated from the rest of the students, of course, but, as we're going to see later on, that does not become permanent with Rev and Mark. But, again, it's an isolation, right? And of course, where does Viviana send him? Well, immediately next to Sarah, right? The person who's going to, one of the three people that's going to cause him to develop the most, right? And, of course, now knowing what Viviana is, that makes perfect amount of sense, right? Send him to the person that's going to be probably, I would say, one of the most effective people in Rev's life, I would say, right? In terms of like anything else, right? Nothing against Belladonna. Belladonna, I think, is like probably secondary to that as well, right? But Sarah is just a person that causes Rev to be more aware of the impacts of his actions, but also his influence on others, I would say, as well. So, fairly interesting at the same time.
Okay.
Alright. And just gotta squeeze through here, get out of my way, and then this is the way out. Well, that was easy. Super simple. Now, which way is the front door again?
That way, past the teacher of the class we just left.
Okay, then, but what?
There's always at least one student who tries to skip class in the first week. This time it's two. Impressive.
And there is that kind of slight bit of humor to Lovecraft's entire design, right?
Nonsense. This school is a haven for exiles.
Yeah.
It's in the name.
I'm not an exile. I'm a human.
Well, perhaps once, but...
No, I still am human!
So how does Lovecraft respond to the human allegations?
I'm not a delinquent,
well,
and I don't belong...
Well, perhaps once, right? Again, he shows pity, he shows...
Enrollment in Cade is never accidental.
Right? And again, he even says it's not accidental at all, right?
But this time it is.
Of the school.
What is your name?
But he doesn't do so in a way that's like egoistic.
Rev.
He uses
Rev
logic,
Venet.
he uses reasoning, and he uses
Mr.
pathos, right? Emotional values.
Venet, I understand you don't believe in this program.
Again,
you wouldn't be the first or last student to feel that way.
Comparing him to
However,
everyone else that has
this
gone through this
is
program as
where
well.
you belong. And even if you don't believe it, you are in need of rehabilitation.
No, I'm not.
Unfortunately, in this situation, your opinion matters little.
And so here we have
Surely
that kind of
you realize
exception, right?
that.
They're like, yeah, in a position here, he has to do his job, right?
And you also
That's
aren't being
completely fair,
destructive.
right? Completely accurate at the same time. So it makes sense, right? He's in a position where he's like, it doesn't matter what you think has to happen, right? What matters is that this needs to happen. Right? Opinions are valid. Lovecraft wouldn't be the first person to feel that way, right? But he's in a position where it is entirely understandable, right? And it is entirely structured in a way that makes the most amount of sense, right? And so because of that, it does not necessarily mean that like he is a bad person, right? Again, he is still keeping the student here, but again, this isn't a normal academy. Right? Cade is a situation and a experience that that person goes through, right? At the same moment in time as well. And so because of that, right, it doesn't take away from those entire moments either, right? It's all about how do we, structure ourselves in a position that makes the most sense here as well.
You're dismissed from my class for the day.
Right? And again, like he gives them an ultimatum. Like, okay, yeah, I understand that you are not comfortable, right, in the situation, right? That's fair, that's valid, right? You are in a position where you're in a place that is all about lacking of morality and social dynamics, right? But again, because of the lack of morality and social dynamics, he immediately is like, oh, well, you do need rehabilitation, right? If you didn't, you wouldn't be leaving the classroom, right? You would be fully ready to study at the same time, right? That does beg the question as to why Mark is here, but I think one of Mark's things is that I think it's one of the things that he is, I think, overly moral, perhaps, right? If there even is such a thing, right? I mean, you can call that toxic positivity, maybe, if you will, but that is like a different concept and standard, right? But it makes sense, right? He's in a position where he's put into a scenario that depends on his cooperation, right? More than like anything else in this entire matter as well. But again, like it's one of the major aspects at the same time, right? And it depends fully on like the way that he essentially acts in general. But yeah, like again, you know, Lovecraft is a fairly chill guy, gives him an ultimatum, says like, hey, I know how you're feeling. This is exactly what we're going to do, right? I'm going to let you run, you know, walk around the school. Again, he's offering Rev the sense of freedom, right? Which again is exactly what Rev wants, right? Right now he feels limited. He feels that he's not in control from Viviana's entire condensation, or condescending remarks, right? He feels like he is being contained like a little animal, right? And so because of that, Lovecraft sees this almost immediately, right? And that kind of shows that it makes sense, right? He's been here for a while. He's rehabilitated possibly a lot, you know, dozens of students, right, throughout his lifetime here. And so because of that, he knows for a fact, like, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to ensure that you're there. The fact being that I don't think we were really ever told if people do get rehabilitated, right? We know that they probably have to, since the school would have to have a reputation for that. If nobody ever did, then the school would probably not have gotten a good reputation, you know, whatever the case is, right? But again, like, it makes so much more sense to really have that kind of perception there as well at the same time. You know, that's an amazing thing to really have, right? That kind of sense of awareness for the situation, and to know, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to do something good, right? I'm going to do something good, self-righteous, right? I'm going to help, right? I'm going to help others around me, right? And I think that is, you know, precisely where a lot of those moments really come in from. So yeah, but yeah, let's continue there. And gives them an ultimatum and allows them to just walk around to gain a sense of familiarity with the environment.
Okay.
And yeah, like Sarah immediately just is like, yeah, you know, it doesn't matter. She does not care because, you know, she's already tried this as well, right? And of course, yeah, Rev is, you know, acquiescing to the situation, but again, you know, it's you know, it is within his nature to try at least something, right? But of course, you know, he's not going to just be frolicking around and, you know, being a good boy, as Viviana, you know, calls him later on. You know, he is trying to gain a sense of control over everything that happens around him.
Teachers are stupid.
It makes sense at the same time. And so again, we're going to see him start to explore the school.
What is this? Lunch?
Hey, Nerissa. This he taken?
Yeah.
And just typical high school dynamics and, you know, realizations of how things are essentially, you know, meant to play out in a typical school situation. This thing is going to be interesting because we see what happens when everyone that we've met so far kind of interacts. Minus Belladonna, who really doesn't even go to the
Okay.
episode.
I'm walking away from that one.
5? But it is a very intuitive.
Is there a nice quiet corner to sit in?
Episode 4, episode 4, yeah.
I guess this'll do. No, it's just to wait out until I can figure out how to get out of this conference.
And again, it's all about what happens when a person is put into a scenario that is all about the sense of control that he carries.
Ben.
Oh, great. It's you.
Greetings.
Oh.
Hello, my seekers. Thank you for your patience and your, well, primarily your help with all of this stuff here as well. It has been a few days since the first part of the recording that you're about to see, and I hadn't realized until after recording that the audio sounded pretty bad. But I am back now. I have a brand new attributes to my PNG tuber, as you see here in the corner, and brand new software, brand new everything, so things should actually be working a lot smoother and a lot better. Hopefully this audio is coming out clear, which I've checked a couple times now, so it is, and hopefully we can continue forward as well. Now, last time we left off, we were pretty much almost done, or almost done. We're a little bit after the halfway point of episode 1 of Freak Show and the pilot, so we can continue looking into this as well. We have left off in the cafeteria where Rev had just come into as well. And now we are going to see what happens when these characters that we have looked into all this time now interact in the same location. Let's get into it.
Forsaken school.
Rev, buddy! How have you been?
Oh, great. It's you.
Greetings.
Oh. Great. It's you?
Hey! Are you a friend of Rev's too?
Not really.
That's crazy! Did you know he was human? I can't believe a human goes to our school!
Uh-huh.
Yo, we should make this our table. You feel me? Get a little lunch gang going?
And we're going to see in, when we eventually reach, of course, the newest episode, episode 7. I think it's 7. Episode 8, the finale. When we reach the finale, we are going to see a bit more about Mark. I definitely feel like within the series, Mark Dracula himself has been, I'm going to say, probably some of the least developed in terms of all the characters. Of course, after we're done with episode 1, we're going to move on to episode 2. And, you know, I definitely think in episode 2, we are going to see a bit more about how Mark behaves and how he acts, right? But right now in the scene, again, we're just seeing Mark acting the way he does normally. He's the happy-go-lucky, individual. And again, like, he has his own kind of personalities, right? He's welcoming, he's open-minded, if not a bit gullible. But here we kind of already see that, like, yeah, he doesn't, he cannot read the room. He is primarily just welcoming this idea. Like, oh, yeah, we should, come in together as well. And the thing about him that we're also going to see within the potion chapter in episode 4 is that Mark does not have a sense of, like, trying to think for the right word. He doesn't have a sense of, like, obsessiveness and clinging to others, right? Like, yes, he does cling to Mark for a lot of the times, to the point where in episode 7 as well, we see a lot of that kind of almost a slightly depressive state to him as well, when he kind of comments on how Rev is not really, like, giving him attention and stuff like that, right? It creates a sense of, wanting belonging, but not to an extreme end as well, right? But we also know that he doesn't mind having these other friends, because for him, it's all about a grouping as well, right? As we're going to see in episode 3, he has quite a bit of siblings. He has a pretty extensive family unit, and that, of course, leads into a situation where, he has to already be in a household, in a position where there's others fighting for that kind of form of attention. But it is interesting to see how he kind of hones into the structure of, like, oh, it's fine if other people are Rev's friend, because, that just means more friends for me, essentially. But it's a pretty interesting case.
What do you say?
Whatever.
Kill me now.
You want me to?
What do you want?
There's no freaking way. That vampire just called you a human. Is he being for real? This has got to be some kind of prank, right?
Yeah, it's not a very funny one, is it? Now, can you scram?
Oh, no way I'm letting a human get away with embarrassing me like that. How about I pop you?
And again, like, that's another aspect that's essentially being held here with Wendy as well, right? Because of that embarrassment that she kind of felt, and not kind of, right, she definitely felt earlier on in the episode, this is essentially something that is an absolute joy for her, right? The thing that embarrasses her is essentially, for the entire school, less than, right? Sure, you'll have Professor, oh my god, you'll have staff like Professor Lovecraft, who believes in the integration of the students with the human world, right? Same thing with Viviana. That is primarily why the academy is made. However, here, Wendy uses that difference between human and monster or deviant, right? Again, before we know what Rev really is, in a sense to really kind of expand on why it is that this is such a joy, right? Because humans do not have powers, right? They are fragile. They are essentially weak. So for Wendy, this gives her the perfect time to see Rev as nothing besides, essentially in a less than position, right? Right now, she's essentially seeing that Rev, for her, is less than important, right? Or I guess we could just say is unimportant to her as well. Not necessarily in his existence, because again, she consistently follows, through with, making his life, there's clear, compulsion to know that, like, yeah, Rev is not the most, well-liked by Wendy, let's say. But it's also in this position where we can kind of see that a big part of her entire hatred comes from that entire idea of, oh, you just do not get along with the rules. And again, we're going to see that in what I could perhaps say one of my favorite scenes with Wendy is going to be within episode 7, right? I think it is the most development that we get from her. And I think it's one of the most important scenes in terms of seeing how does Rev's actions impact others, right? Let's be honest, right? Rev is the main character, right? It does not mean he's a Mary Sue. It does not mean that he is without consequences, because we consistently see him pay for his actions, right? That he makes others feel bad, and that in of itself creates a sense of unfairness, right? And especially from Wendy, right? And here she sees that as like, oh, well, now we have a actual deviant, right? This human has come into the school, and I'm not letting that get away from it. It's not that like, oh, there's a human inside our school, period. It's that like, oh, a human embarrassed me, right? Which makes her even more frustrated and even more irritated. Of course, now here she's giddy because now it just means that she could just kill him. But it's like, yeah, again, it showcases that for her, this is even more insulting, right? Again, she has a sense of identity that is fragile. She places herself in a position to isolate from others because, again, she is just that kind of person. But here, she immediately is telling Rev, that's like, oh, you're a human? Okay, well, that gives me even more reason to kill you, right? It won't really matter because you can't have a human running around this place. That is against the rules. So for her, Rev is unimportant, yes, but it's also that he is less than valuable to the greater social area, right? For Wendy, she believes that Rev to everyone should be as unimportant as he is to her, right? And so because of that, she develops this sense of like, okay, well, this guy is breaking the rules, right? Others are, again, she doesn't really see his connection with others until what we're about to see right now. But, for her, it's like, this guy's breaking the rules, right? He's in a place he shouldn't belong. And now he's just embarrassing people for just the sake of what? As we said before, right? Ego, right? Entitlement, perhaps? We don't really know, right? But again, for her, Rev is her greatest bane, but also as unimportant as an ant underneath her feet. So, let's continue.
You, like the walking flesh bag you are!
Hey, back off!
Hey! Back off! Out of my way, loser!
I'm not gonna let you hurt my new BFF!
What? Since when was that decided?
I'm not playing around, Fang Face. Move it or else.
Oh, lunch is over.
It's time for Undead class! Come on, Rev, you'll love this one.
What? Put me down, you mongrel!
Hey!
And again, here we just see those entire moments, right? With Wendy here, again, she still doesn't realize exactly how people perceive Rev, right? Because again, it's the first day, people, Mark is making friends with everybody, so this seems like just a normal thing, right? And, Wendy, of course, is just putting up this, confrontation that like, hey, yeah, you better get out of my way. I need to kill that guy because he embarrassed me, right? But again, like with Mark, again, that is another thing that we see again, once again here, is that Mark has a low sense of social awareness, right? And behavioral perception. But and again, like so, we'll see, like with especially in the real world, we see that this within cases with individuals with autistic behavior, or just individuals who pretty much have a low sense of familiar settlements, right, and structure, which essentially just means that a person is in a household where they are not pretty much taken care of that much. Typically with children, they are either the ones that have to become responsible for the parents, or they are pretty much in a position where they are not easily as recognized. We'll see that a lot with like kids that are like the middle child in a family and stuff like that, where you don't really have as much attention as, of course, the older or younger siblings, which we know for Mark that is like extremely like beyond even that point. But you know, he clearly has a lack of like social awareness and behavior towards, you know, what is essentially going on, and that of course leads him to just picking up Rev as well. And for Wendy, again, it's just a simple aspect of confrontation in general, right? So we're going to skip ahead here a bit because a large part of the Undead class is just primarily him sneaking away, of course, you know, not really caring about what is going on, right? And then, of course, this leads to him teaming up with Sarah here to escape once again. Again, Sarah, we already had literally the whole video about her, so there's not really that much I can go into here. But again, it's like, you know, she is skipping class, but, you know, not to necessarily leave the school, just because what's the point in doing this, right? There is no real point within it, you know, at the same time, right? And she is realistic. I would argue that she's also nihilistic, right? Nihilism is essentially the feeling that nothing matters, right? There is no point in doing anything. Essentially, a almost permanent depressive belief system, right? And with Sarah, again, she's been around for hundreds of years, I believe, within this academy, right? Or at least long enough to see many people just come and go, right? And that is one of the big parts about Sarah's character, that she does not care. She does not find a point in doing anything, right? She's realistic because she states things as they are, right? She's not trying to be optimistic or idealistic, right? She is realistic and nihilistic because she is taking things as they are and as they appear to be, right? Of course, you know, she helps him, you know, here and there, right? She's even like, okay, yeah. And like I said, most of her actions are based around a state of boredom at the same time, right? You know, I made my own model a while ago called the net experience scale, which measures how much boredom can a person essentially feel within a given social area or within a given location in general, right? And the thing is that even in a small area like a classroom or even your own room, there are a certain amount of attributes that can, you know, that are limited until you become bored once again. And so you seek more stimuli, and so you seek anything to essentially create a sense of belonging and create a sense of action that is essentially going on, right? We are human beings. We need to stay active. We need to stay aware as well, or else we start to become mad and bored, and you know, that we go a bit crazy. Not the best position to find yourself within at all. But with Sarah here, yeah, it is just pure boredom, right? She has been around so long that she pretty much has seen anything that could possibly ever happen within this given school. You know, but she's also willing to help him out because, again, you know, he's Rev, right? He is somebody who is action-oriented, so why not, right? Again, there's less fascination here than what we're going to see in episode 3, but that is one of the biggest points about her, is that she, you know, is pretty much an action-oriented, attracted person, right? That's what she gravitates towards because it's easier than staying bored for a longer period of time as well. So she ends up helping him here, of course. You know, one of the big aspects.
Going to stop me? Take this! That's really the best this school could do.
Right, and again, like, Rev underestimates a lot of his environment, especially now in the beginning, because, again, he has been placed and trapped in this environment, right, like a little rabbit in a cage, and he wants out, right? He doesn't want to stay here. He doesn't want to learn any of this stuff. He wants to go out because of all those things, right? Fact of the matter being that, as we saw in the beginning, right, he wasn't too, what's the word? He wasn't too disinterested on the in the alchemy class, right? He even said that was a pretty cool thing. But when he gets there, of course, he gets into that immediate planning system because he knows that that's what it is, right? I mean, again, they're learning the basics, but like you told Belladonna, he already knows all of this, right? He gives himself the sense of entitlement and importance because he has that work, right? And this is the first time so far, I believe. Oh, not really the first time, because he does use the magic to summon the skeleton over here in the undead class. But this is one of the first times we've seen him use his magic as well, right? And again, what did he do? Immediately killed the janitor, or at least one of them, right? Which again shows us that, like, yeah, there is proof to what he says, right? He's not just lying his butt off. He's not saying like, oh, I know magic, when in reality he doesn't. He can put the money where his mouth is, right? Because he knows exactly what it is that he can do, and compared to everyone else in this school, right? So right here, he already immediately underestimates the janitor and the forces that Viviana could put against him because of the fact that he's like, oh, I know magic, right? And just in case you think I was some amateur, bam, here you go, one janitor dead, right? Of course, that doesn't end up too well because more come by.
It's so easy. Whoa! Why
exactly,
so
right?
Many?
He finds himself overwhelmed.
Stick back, you creatures!
And of course, how does he respond to a situation where he's overwhelmed? He responds with anger and more action, right? Because that's what he is, right? Stress leads us to, once again, also make active choices because, again, you have the fight, flight, freeze, right? And it's one of those aspects where you have so much of that stress and anger of his given situation that, of course, he constantly chooses to fight because that is the best possible chance he has of escaping, So this is exactly the point where he becomes overwhelmed and, he asks Sarah for help, as we're about to see, but again, not because of any aspect of mutual trust, but because she's there, he can have divine powers, which I'm assuming Rev already knows, since he says that he knows pretty much almost all the monsters in this school from being a necromancer. So, of course, it's not in a position where he doesn't know everything. It's in a position where he's going to use what is against him, or what is really next to him, because it is the easiest way to escape a given situation, right? Does that make him manipulative? Probably not. I think it makes him advantageous, and it makes him strategic, right? And that is essentially one of the main aspects about Rev as well, right? Is that he is advantageous and strategic because of the fact that he is in a position where he's using his skills in any given situation that requires them, So I find that to be a really, really important aspect to really have, just as a character in general. And
necromancer, you can't hit me. Knock it off. Get out.
Right. Again, I'm a necromancer. You are lower than me. Again, just another sense of egoistic aspect as well. Again, his talents as a necromancer, I find to be one of the most interesting parts of his characterization. Because again, necromancer is all about, of course, the dead, controlling the dead, right? Controlling the living. Beings that have already lived their lives, you can bring back and make them do your bidding. Again, there is a step above, right? There's almost like what we would call it a pecking order to the whole thing, right? And so because of that, it gives you this entire sense of like, yeah, he knows that he can do all these things, right? But when people don't believe him or don't care, he puts in this front of anger and frustration towards his given situation,
Out of my way! Stop it! Stop what? More are coming? Where are they even coming from? I can't take this. Why are there so many? Can you do something?
Huh? Oh, sure.
Okay, whatever. Finally, I can get out.
He doesn't question it, right? Because again, in his situation, it worked in his favor. So why question a sense of assistance that's given to him, right? And so, of course, that also brings in the question: if Viviana knows everything's going to happen, why did she stop sending these things after Rev? Well, again, as we're about to see, it doesn't matter, right? Because fate has handed her the keys, and she is going to drive this truck straight into his dreams and destroy them.
Out of here. Well, are you coming?
No point.
No point! Then why did you bother helping if you're not leaving too? All right.
And again, like that is of course the 9 and 6 side of Sarah coming in as well. But with Rev, that is interesting, right? For somebody who is really strategic and really all about himself, like he still asks her, like, yeah, are you coming? Like the exit is this way. If you want to leave too, then let's do this, right? Again, he's somebody who is still fair at the end of the day because of that. Fact might be, I think the only character he's not fair to would be Wendy herself, right? But he's still fair, and I think that is a really fascinating point about his character, right? Something that is really important to really see at the same time, that he is somebody who doesn't put others ahead of himself. That part's still not true, but he is somebody who sees talent and sees skill and is like, okay, so just like Belladonna, right? He's like, okay, fine, I'll you know, you can come with me, because why not? Again, he's not going to guard the exit for himself. He doesn't care what she does, right? Which he tells her multiple times throughout the entire series. He doesn't care what it is that she does, because it doesn't matter, right? He's going to escape, or he's going to try to, throughout many of these episodes. And whatever Sarah decides to do, that's on her, right? If she wants to go with them, sure. If she doesn't, then she needs to find her own way out. He's not going to do double the work for a person he doesn't even know nor cares about, right? But again, really, really impressive stuff.
Forget it. I'm out of here. Finally. I'm free of this godforsaken school. Until I give those idiotic parents of mine a piece of my mind. What?
Welcome back, Mr. Venet.
What the? How did you?
I warned you before. No one leaves this campus without my say-so. Escape is futile, Mr. Venet. I know all and see all. No.
And this is what I'm really going to be curious about, especially towards the towards our journey towards episode 8 of the finale of the season, or the series, perhaps. But you know, that is the thing, right? Why is Rev so important, right? Ashley says later on in the finale, anything that he does or says or whatever the case is, it doesn't matter what he does, because it'll all lead into the betterment of the academy, right? The betterment of the monsters that live within it, right? These students. And again, of course, here, Rev is about to be in a position where he's put into a scenario where it doesn't matter what he does, because it's all part of her plan, right? He's going to keep bringing him back. He can't escape, right? His clever ideas, ones that he has made plenty of times, right? Which, fact of the matter being that I would say this episode is a mirror of episode number 5, escaping the detention with Sarah, because again, it's a similar aspect here. It's similar aspect that it's also mirrored as well, because in this episode he's placing many different plans, right? The potions, the trying to escape, you know, with the undead duplicate, right? Even with Lovecraft, is just walking away from the situation, stuff like that. Again, he has done many aspects of trying to avoid confronting the situation, right? Unless it goes against him, right? So like characters like Wendy, or of course the undead army as well, the janitors. But other than that, he consistently places a plan of escape, right? And that mirrors episode 5, wherein, right, with Sarah, he is in a situation where he's going to try anything to piss off Viviana, right? We'll talk more about that when we get into that episode, but it is such a fascinating aspect of his character to consistently make these different ideas and make these different plans. Again, he does not give up, because he does not do that at all. That is not his caricature, if you will, right? But that is one of the main things about Rev that is so interesting, is that, yeah, he does not give up. He does not want to give up, because he wants to get out of a situation where he is not in control, where he's not the best, right? Where his sense of agency is gone, right? And that's what Viviana is going to tell him right now.
No matter where you go, no matter what you try, I see it. You can't leave. And one would sooner die than get expelled from my school.
Which will lead us into episode 2.
Do you finally get it, student?
Ooh. Oh, and that must hurt Rev even more. She does not even refer to him by name, right? Just student, right? You are one of many. You are as common as the average person in this place. Which, as we said in the previous video that I recorded a couple days ago, that is something that gets in his nerves, right? Because Rev, of course, you know, his egoism is there, but his egoism makes him desperate to be unique and to be separate from others. Because while he does feel a sense of FOMO, right, fear of missing out, as we said, despite the fact that he will feel FOMO towards a lot of events, he does not, right? He does not want to be compared to others, right? And again, this is strategically placed by Viviana, right? He is not someone who matters in an individualistic level. Now, later on, again, you know, that could be changed from what Viviana tells him in episode 7, but, you know, here, that could not be further true than anything else, right? And that works super well for a lot of what he says, she says, and does, right? And for Viviana, you know, this is, of course, a big power move, right? But, like, imagine what is different, right? Like, he's asking her right now, what are you, right? What does she say?
What are you?
Something far beyond your comprehension. Believe me. Regardless.
Right. And again, it puts a massive divide between the two of them, right? She says, I am something so beyond comprehension that it does not matter, right? Which, again, funnily enough, goes exactly with what Professor Lovecraft had said in the middle of the episode, where he mentions how humans cannot, you know, deal with their presence, right, the monster's presence, because we're beyond their understanding, right? And in a sense, it's almost proving, like, yeah, if you are human, then yeah, I am beyond your comprehension, right? I am less than. And now, of course, you know, we know that this is quite literally true for what she actually is, which, you know, even then, we don't really know too much, right? We know that she is, like, omnipresent to a certain degree, and, you know, knows everything that's going to happen and everything that will happen, you know, all that stuff. But, you know, for her, and of course, she, you know, she added the last part, believe me, which, again, like, listen to the tone of her voice here as well when she says that.
Regardless.
You.
Something far beyond your comprehension. Believe me.
Right, believe me, almost, like, again, that almost sounds like an exasperated version of that, right? Like, believe me, this is true, right? Like, there is nothing that you can do that I won't know about, right? There is no escape in the situation because of everything that happens, right? And again, like, I find that to just work super well in that entire idea as well. But, like, yeah, it immediately puts him in his place and, you know, puts him in a situation where he's not in control and he does not matter as an individual, right? He is just another student among an ocean of them as well. And that is just so good writing. So good writing. My God. Again, Rick Cypher, you have done an amazing job with this series. Oh my God. It is so good. Anyway.
Regardless, punishment is in order. I think I'll have you sent to your dorm room for the rest of the day. Do try to be on your best behavior on your next day of classes. I would hate to have to issue a real punishment on your first week. Dismissed.
Not even giving him a chance to speak. Dismissed. You're done, right? My words are absolute. Doesn't matter what you say. Your agency is gone. Your agency is destroyed, right? Because again, that is his thing. Currently, he is completely out of the ball game. His agency is constantly being taken away, right? Which again brings him into a state of independence, right? Because again, his independence is immediately what's being taken away. His agency and his desperation of uniqueness is immediately being questioned constantly by those around him, right? Like Sarah, you know, asks if he's joking about being a human, while Mark is welcoming, you know, in a sense it almost comes across as like a sense of like, you know, oh, that's great anyway, right? As though, again, it does not matter, you know, in the slightest for him, because, you know, that's entirely what a lot of these entire characters do, is that they act in their own perspective, right? Because, again, that is essentially what gives them a sense of understanding, right? But again, even through everything else here, he's not allowed to act in his own accord because another person says he's not, you know? And he's taken away. Back to his dorm room, right? Again, a physical proof that his agency is done. He cannot escape, right? He cannot do anything that goes against the rules that she laid down, right? Which, of course, that's going to be questioned in episode 5, but speaking in this entire instance, right, he's put into a situation where this is physical proof that one,
coffin.
That one, he cannot go anywhere. As we're about to see. 2, she puts him in a situation where it is so bad for him.
Get used to it now.
That so essentially pretty much be
nothing I can do if the headmaster can just teleport me back anytime I try to leave.
Exactly, right? And he's seeing his sense of like agency being lost here as well, where it doesn't matter what he does, he has to stay put and
maybe
can't do much.
Just give up on trying to break out.
And since we kind of see his tone there almost being similar to Sarah's, right? Where it's like, maybe I should just give up, right? Like, let's not try. Let's not do much of anything. And that is a nihilistic approach to, you know, the situation as well. Which, again, we can always look at, you know, within how much of these approaches do work and how much of it is incredibly different, right? That is the approach that we're going to see here as well, right? When it comes into this entire school, when it comes into everything that happens here, there's many approaches to the situation, right? There's optimistic, right? Which is essentially with Mark, right? It's the belief that the academy can make me a better person, right? There is idealistic, which is the one we're about to see the most toward the end of this, which is that while this place is not for me, it may assist me in my problems and may make my mindset and behavior far more stable / make me a happier person. You could take the nihilistic viewpoint, which is what Sarah has, which is that there is no hope. I am trapped here forever, and I should just go along with the cycle, right? It does not mean that you are trying your best with the classes, because of course Sarah isn't, but it does mean that you're just going along, you're going with the flow of things, right? You are in a position where you're not going to try, but you're also not going to escape, right? And these are some of the biggest aspects of this entire situation, right? You can be one way, you can be another way. Yeah, there's many other ideologies we can even add here as well, right? You can be realistic, which realistic in a sense is fairly standardized, right? But realistic is essentially saying that I cannot escape this place due to the constraints placed upon me. But there can still be a manner of escape somewhere. Which is entirely the case here as well, right? If Rev was just purely angry all the time, then he would be far less realistic, and I think he would be a lot more, I think it would just be a lot more desperate, right? Action-oriented, an approach towards everything else here as well. Because that is one of the major aspects of being stuck in this entire location, is that this is more of like Mark's perception, right? That like, you know, this place is amazing. I have all these friends. You know, I can become my own person, even though apparently, yeah, his siblings are also here, a lot of them. So it still makes a lot of sense for him to be in that kind of position, right? You can be idealistic, which is what we're going to see at the end. That is pretty much Professor Lovecraft's kind of mentality there. There is nihilistic approach, to which Sarah herself uses. And then, of course, there's a realistic approach, which I would say that I think Rev himself kind of has a bit more of that realistic approach, because he knows that he can't escape right now. But as we're going to see, that's not going to stop him from doing what he can to leave this place. Because, again, he has his own agency for himself. Again, that is his own belief, right? The realistic aspect of it is that he doesn't have his own agency. And, again, Principal can just teleport him back. So, you know, did he give up? No. Again, he still wants what he wants, and he's going to, you know, keep going until he gets that, right? So that is like one of the 4 major approaches to this entire situation that a lot of these characters take. Now you're probably asking, well, what about Belladonna? Belladonna is a bit more difficult to really see, right? But when we get into episode 6, we're going to see how her approach to the situation was really detailed, especially by Professor Lovecraft. Because, of course, he gave her his own speech, the ones that he gives to a lot of these students. And you know, it is that same approach of idealism, right? Like, even though this place may not be for you, even though you may have done something horrible, you can still put in the effort and become a far better person than what you are right now, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to become human. It just means that you're going to become a nicer monster, right? Because even though you are in a place that is made for these deviancies and for, you know, these monstrous natures and lack of morality and everything that we feel as monsters within this world, even though you're in that place, it does not mean you can't be redeemed within society. It doesn't mean that you can't love who you are. And it doesn't mean that you can't change into a better version of yourself, right? And so these entire ideas are essentially what is being taught by Lovecraft here, right? And we're going to go back to that when he does his little speech thing here. But again, that's one of the biggest parts about Rev's character is that can he switch between a lot of these approaches, right? Can he become more adaptive? And can these themes be essentially something that he can put in his own entire sense of self, right? So let's see what happens after.
Rev, you're my roommate this year? Awesome!
Never mind. I hate this school.
Rev, where are you going, buddy? Come back!
Gotta get out of this.
And you could make the argument, does, is Mark responsible for Rev to kind of relapse back into the state of not caring and being self-serving and all these things? I would probably say not. And I think the only reason behind that is simply because of the fact that one of the main things about Rev is that he always feels this way, right? He already has his own sense of action and a sense of direction that he gives himself, right? I don't think Mark is going to be responsible for like every single moment where like he's going to act in this manner, because that's just who Rev is as a person, And so I don't think it's really something that's really, what's the word? Inevitable. Or not inevitable, but it's not really something that's rigidly placed, right? It's not like he is willing to give this place a chance and then Mark says something that annoys him, or Mark is just being overly positive and breaking that social boundary, and then Rev just is like, nope, I'm out. Nope, I hate this place. This has convinced me once again that I'm done, right? Which makes sense, because right before that, as we just saw, he's not saying like, oh, I'm willing to do this. He's saying like, oh, I can't escape, right? Like, what's the point of trying to escape if she's just going to teleport me back, right? But again, he's in a state of contemplation, so it's not like he's really without a sense of hope for his situation, essentially, right? Or a sense of like action-oriented solutions that are given to him as well, right? But of course, his actions aren't without consequences, as we're about to see here as well.
Hey, Twerp. You look lost, little human.
Beat it, Wendigo.
Aw, come on.
And that's what I love between the well, I wouldn't say really banter, but I would say like the back and forth conversations between the two of them is that, yeah, Wendy treats him as less than. So of course, she'll call him human. Of course, she calls him Rev, later on, but here it's like that immediate back and forth is like, oh, little human, and what do you say? He's like, beat it, Wendigo, because that's one of Rev's main characteristics that that we mentioned before as well. Which is that Rev calls people by what they are, like the creatures, like vampire, seraphim, Wendigo here, of course, witch, later on for Belladonna. But again, like, he doesn't refer to them by their real names often, right? Like, he does sometimes, especially with like Sarah and stuff like that, but that is his main way of dividing himself from other people. Again, he truly believes he's human, so everyone else here is just a monster to him. So it's like, what does it matter, right? I'm not going to treat them like their own people. I'm not going to treat them like a friend or anything like that, right? I am going to treat them like what they are, right? Which is a monster. And, Wendy does the same thing to him. And so you kind of have this back and forth of two people who do not care about one another, right? Who see one another as less than, as separate from them, right? And, of course, this is more so in Wendy's case, the blame of actions that are committed towards them as well, right? Like, Rev just blames this entire place. Wendy blames him, specifically because she was already here beforehand, right? So again, it's a very, very interesting kind of position to really find ourselves within as well, especially with this entire scenario.
Don't be like that. I can tell your little feelings are hurt.
Honest, any comments?
What's wrong? Finally realize you don't belong here.
I'm not in the mood.
And the point is, he does feel like he doesn't belong here, because that's the entire point. That's why he does all these things throughout this entire episode, right? Now, Wendy isn't helping, considering that, she's being a real jerk about it. But, it's entirely, in her behavior and in her character to say these entire things as well, right? She's all about pretty much rage-baiting the living hell out of Rev constantly. And that seems to be like her main approach to a lot of situations because of that divide of herself and others around her. So in a social setting, she wants to be in control. So what does? She condescends and she rage baits a person into pretty much acting out of emotion rather than logic.
For this.
Oh, but I am. Especially after you embarrassed me in alchemy. You think I forgot about that?
That was your fault for standing there.
Oh, you don't want to get snarky with me, brat. You think you belong here just because you're wearing that uniform? Ha! What a joke!
And you know, this is one of those situations where, of course, you know, we side with Rev here a bit more because of the fact that, you know, he didn't get that uniform, right? He didn't choose to put the uniform on. It was forced upon him. He was forced in the situation, right? And for him, it's like, well, now you have this, you know, jerk of a character or jerk of a person coming to me and telling me that she's still mad because of something that wasn't my fault because she was just in that vicinity, right? It could have happened to anybody. There was no personal vendetta against it, right? But again, like, both of these characters are, you know, they're using information that is outside of the context, right? She doesn't know that he's being forced with all of this and that, you know, he truly believes that he's human and all that stuff, right? Just as much as he doesn't know that her whole main thing is being isolated from others and not really building connections, right? And that, you know, when she's made at the center of attention, she's brought on with this level of embarrassment from other people around her, which she can't take because that isolation bubble is being broken, right? People are going into it and making fun of her for a situation that was not her fault, right? So again, we're working with both characters here who are equally outside of that kind of context as well.
What's your problem?
Humans don't belong at Cade, Twerp, so I'm gonna take care of that. By killing you!
What?
Ah!
What?
And that's one of the main things about that Red's whole entire character here is just simply like, yeah, like, I don't want to be here, so this entire situation is unfair, right?
What the? How are you still alive?
No clue. Oh, hang on.
And there is the question, right? Why isn't he, like, you know, freaking the hell out? Why is he yelling that, like, oh, well, I'm not dead. What the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? Yeah. But again, it also makes sense because Red is always really action oriented. Even now, he's like, you know, oh, I may have been stabbed by you, but also we're still fighting. So hang on, bam, blast you out the window. Which, as we're going to see, is quite a big pattern for Wendy, especially with her behavior and the consequences that come of it as well. But again, like, it makes so much sense that he's like somebody who's so action oriented that any other like situations that are occurring around him, they get blocked out, right? His mindset is pretty much so straightforward that he cannot be pretty much affected by much, right? So he has a head first and focused mindset, right? Because that is entirely what his main goal here is, right? He needs to get out of a place. He needs to get out of a confliction that he has. So for him, that's the entire point around it. Anything else besides that doesn't matter, right? And we're gonna see that with episode 3 when he gets stuck in the void with Wendy and then later on Sarah. That, like, despite everything, his main thing is getting out of the place, right? It doesn't matter what a person is feeling, what they want to do, the complaining that comes from people like Wendy, because he does not care. Because again, it does not meet his first aspect, his first quality of C, which is a state of independence. He does not care about what other people want because it does not match what he wants, right? Which, of course, is for people to have a lack of empathy, right? So again, it's a really interesting connection to really have here.
Hey! No biting in the halls!
Right. My bad. More important question. How am I not dead?
You're kidding, right?
Huh?
You already are dead.
Crazy reveal, especially for many people in like this first episode, because
there's
like,
no way you actually thought you were a human this whole time.
What are you talking about?
Which is what makes this entire series really fascinating as well, because were they to go along with just the fact that, yeah, Rev was actually human, you know, blah, 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 and he's a human in a monster world. Again, not something that's that crazy to believe, and, you know, it's a pretty, especially nowadays, it's a pretty common thing, right? You'll have, you know, shows like The Owl House, for example, right? A human in a world that is precisely, you know, inhuman. But again, like, if they were to go along this entire route, then yeah, like, he would still be in a position where he wants to get out. There is this divide, right? But now he's forced into a situation where it's like, no, your independence, it is being questioned, right? You may be a necromancer, but there are other people here who can do magic sometimes even stronger than his own, right? With books like the Necronomicon and such, right? So for this entire point, it's like your independence no longer matters, right? Your sense of agency that you had, right? It may have been destroyed, and you may be able to do a lot more, like, in this entire academy than you would in like a more stricter kind of environment, but you know, you're not human, right? Sorry, buddy, you're not human. Not right now. Not ever. Right? You are a revenant, as we're gonna see here from Belladonna.
You're a revenant, you dolt!
And again, like that awareness.
As in, a reanimated corpse cursed with immortality?
I know what a revenant is!
Then how come you didn't know you were one?
How do you?
Your blood is literally blue. You seriously?
Which is fascinating because again, he never hurt himself throughout this entire episode, throughout this entire like day that he was in the academy. So it is interesting how just from that one look, Belladonna was immediately like that. But again, it makes sense, right? She would know immediately he's a revenant because of his blood that is, you know, bleeding from his body right now. But again, like it makes so much sense that like, you know, her academic genius and prowess is enough to really just immediately notice what kind of monster is this person, right? She wouldn't believe that he's human because again, there's no humans here. But yeah, I mean, it is really, really interesting, right? And again, we're gonna see later on in episode number 6 with Belladonna's backstory. But like technically speaking, her being a witch, right? Especially if she's a descendant from like a Salem witch, essentially. But even with her being a witch, that's still technically a human. It's just a human that could do magic, essentially, right? Almost like a mage or a warlock or whatever, right? You know, technically it does make her a monster because she's a mindless displaced and stuff like that. But like it is, of course, that kind of sense of irony that, you know, she is, as Rev called her, right, the most human out of everyone by far. But, you know, it is really interesting to see how like her sense of awareness of his position is entirely there, right? Like she was also the one who didn't really believe that he was human, even through his claims.
Never noticed it before. Haven't you ever checked your heartbeat?
No.
What about food? You never questioned not getting home?
It is entire aspect.
You're sure? What's with that face?
I'm alive.
Right, and that is the thing, right? Like, do I agree with Rev's quote later on about that she is the most, you know, human out of everyone? I don't really think so, right? As we're going to see, like her backstory is very, you know, very, very tragic. But you know, one of the main things about Belladonna is that, you know, she has a sense of empathy, right? I mean, she was put into a position where, like, this realization of something horrible, you know, shocks you to your very core, right? And with Rev here, it's being told that, yeah, he is a monster, right? And at this point, like, her, that little, like, exasperation, I guess, if you want to call it that, but that little noise that she made right now, it's like, it's a sense of, like, realizing now, like, oh, no, this guy's serious, right? He really didn't know that he was a revenant, right? And, you know, that creates a sense of sympathy, right? And again, like, it's a shame that it doesn't really build much, because last time, you know, next point where we'll see her is going to be in, like, you know, episode 3 when you know, he's trying to ask her for help for that small little scene. But, you know, it is a bit, you know, saddening as well, right? But it makes sense as to why she kind of returns back to just not caring in, like, episode number 4, because, again, like, Rev is also just acting the way he is normally, right? And being, like, a bit more of, like, a jerk of a character, right? But, I don't know, I think it's a really, really fascinating aspect to really have Bella's sense of empathy really being showed here, right? Which makes sense since she's the one who passes the morality test in episode 4, but again, it just works really well, right? Because now Rev's independence, right? His agency, his mindset, it's like, it's all kind of put on pause right now, right? We're in a state of contemplation of trying to figure out where we are, right? You could call it an identity crisis. I wouldn't. I would say it's more so an identity questioning, right? Identity crisis, we typically have that with older individuals, right? Typically between the ages of like 35 to around 40 or so. Sometimes around 35 to 50 years of age, where you're in a position where you have had experience, you have had events within your life, positive and negative, and you're in a position where you question, you know, what do I do? Where am I, right? Fact of the matter being that, you know, one of the main things that I essentially say is that when we are taught within society that we are needed for something, right? When we are taught in elementary school, it's about the other, right? We are taught to share, we are taught to be kind to others, right? Treat others the way that you'd like to be treated. We are taught about the other, right? The one besides us, our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends and family, everyone around us, and to put our own sense of self, our own priorities as secondary, right? When we're in high school, we're taught about the self, right? Sex ed, driving, and financial literacy, if you all were lucky in high school, or if you are in high school right now. We are taught about the sense of self, right? That is the place where we find our own identity, our own style, and our own sense of belonging, right? What can I do to show others that I am cool or that I belong here, right? When we reach to the college levels, we learn about the self for the other, right? So what can I do to help my country? What can I do to help my society, my community, right? It doesn't mean you can't do that in high school. It just means that in college, that is essentially what society garners as an important aspect, right? It is a sense of servitude of the self, right? We learn what we want to learn, and we use that to better our own civic duties towards other people, right? Here, of course, in Monster High, as it says in the title, this is a high school setting. It's about the self. It's about finding who we are as people, right? And so with Rev here, again, his entire reality has been shifted and changed, right? And he's in a position where now he's kind of questioning, like, oh, what am I, right? In the beginning, it's a sense of realism that he was showing in his dorm room, where he's like, oh, I can't leave, right? So now what are the list of things that he knows, right? Well, 1, I can't leave, right? 2, nobody believes that I'm human. And now 3, I'm actually not human. Which 1 means everyone around me was right. That means I'm wrong, right? Which is, again, big blow to his egoism. And secondly, it means that his entire desperation to leave didn't even matter because of the fact that, back to the second point of everyone being correct, that means he does belong here, right? And as we're going to see him sitting on the ledge talking about what he is, that means that his parents, right, knew who he was. That means the people that, he was actually pretty chill with, right? Those people had essentially lied about his own sense of identity, which is horrible for a person like him, right? He's fairly young of a person, or depending on how old a revenant like him could be, but let's put it in the teenage years of, I'd say that their behavior and their language. I'm going to say about 15 to 16. I would say. I think it's a pretty good average, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that they already told us the ages of these characters. Some other time, you guys can always correct me as well. But that is one of the main things about these characters, is that their behavior is within this kind of teenage range of trying to find out who we are as a person, right? Belladonna seems to have fit in pretty well. She already becomes a lot more of a confident version of herself versus who she was in her old school, right? The elementary school perspective is about the other, right? What can we do for other people? I think this mindset is something that Mark has, right? What can I do to make others happy, right? My goal is to help others, to ensure that my usefulness is met, and that I'm not being useless, and that I'm not a bad person, right? And he fulfills that by, of course, creating acts of servitude, which is a form of love towards other people around him as well. But right now, he's having a sense of questioning his own sense of identity, and which is, going to lead him into a position where he's probably not that mentally stable, if he was beforehand as well.
I'm just another undead, like the kind mom and dad summon. That explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, he knows his parents more than of course, anybody else. But again, he compares himself to just the average undead, right? Like the ones he fought in the hallway, right? Like things like Raven, for example, right? He's just a creation, right? He doesn't have his own, individualism, right? He's just like every other thing around him, right? Again, that proves why he's so miserable. Right? I mean, he's in a position where that's the least. That is the least attractive option to really have in his lifestyle, right? But again, it makes the most amount of sense, at least for his entire situation. He's like, yeah, no, that explains a lot.
Yo, Teach! There he is! Don't know why he snuck out to go sit on a balcony, but...
Mr. Venet, what are you doing?
Relax. Not escaping. There's no point. That principal. I don't know what she is, but there's no getting away from her. She could bring me back from hell. Probably.
Definitely.
Listen, Rev, you misunderstand. Cade is not a prison.
Which that statement from Sarah, by the way, it's yeah, it's a bit more still on the realistic / nihilistic side as well. But yeah, it's like definitely, yeah, she can bring you back from hell, and everything you do wouldn't matter. That does beg the question of if Sarah had tried to escape before in the past, but I doubt it. Right? Again, like even when we learn about her backstory in episode 3, or really more so just a small snippet of it, she doesn't seem like the type that would really care. She'd just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Right? We know that magic's powerful enough to kill a lot of undead, but I doubt Viviana would even, care about that. She would probably have contingencies to everything. But, it is like that as well. But let's go back a bit because we got to hear Lovecraft's perspective.
Listen, Rev, you misunderstand. Cade is not a prison.
It isn't.
Hush, you.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Like, again, her behavior makes that statement, pretty accurate. It's like, yeah, I mean, isn't it? Like, you can't leave, and, even kids that die are just buried here anyway, right? So it's like, there really isn't a sense of freedom, essentially, right? Which I said before, like, that kind of contrasts what I said previously just now about how, this is a situation that, pretty much relies on a sense of, behavioral integrity, but I don't know, it is a really interesting connection to really make. It's like, yeah, is it not a prison? Like, did I miss something about it, right? But, it is accurate. It is a sentiment that is true, right? But, again, Lovecraft doesn't see it that way, right? Again, maybe we'll learn a bit more about his backstory in the finale, but he is in a position where that is one of his major aspects to really recognize as well, right? But let's continue forward.
Cade is an opportunity. A second chance for those who were never given a first. Just because you aren't human doesn't mean you don't deserve to live like one. You have a choice, Rev. You can either spend your time here at Cade angry and bitter, or you can make something of yourself. Prove that you're the human you want to be.
And that is... God, Lovecraft is so good. He is so good. Again, I would love to do a therapy analysis on, Lovecraft himself, essentially says. Psychological analysis of his character, but, again, that is his ultimatum, right? He doesn't believe that there is no hope for people, right? He believes every single person deserves a chance to be a better version of who they are, right? Which is what we said, right? It's a change to be a better version of who you are, right? We're not trying to make you human. We are trying to make you a human-like monster, right? You're trying to make you a better monster, a better version of who you are currently, so that you can have morality, you can have emotion, right? You can have empathy. And again, it's all about that as well. And again, like he says, right, he's still giving him that favorable statement of you claim to be human? Okay, then prove that you are, right? Prove that humanity is within you, right? It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what happens. Prove that you are the person that you want to be, right? And it gives them those balances, right? You can be miserable and see this place as a prison, or you can give it the chance to, be in a position of where you are as a person, right? And that's why, again, I think Lovecraft, of course, is just the embodiment of the approach of a nihilistic viewpoint towards the way that everything works within Cade, right? Sure, this place may be horrible, right? Sure, you may struggle, but that doesn't mean that you are bad. That does not mean that you cannot put your best foot forward and be a better version of who you are, right? And that is Lovecraft's belief in his students, right? He kind of has Isaiah's mentality from My Hero Academia, right? It is a state of giving people a chance, right? And being confident that we can do this if you cooperate with my lessons. If you cooperate with this status quo, it will be in your favor, right? And it's a favorable outcome at the same time.
Yeah, and you've got
the matter being, let's even add another one here. This may not be an ideology that comes in a lot in the real world. Figuristic mindset as well, which is that this place as advantages for me can potentially help me and could give benefits to my livelihood. The very realistic option is a bit more of a combination of idealism and realism as well, right? Which is essentially saying that like this place is for me, but it's also self-centered to a certain degree because it's all about how can this place benefit me, right? What can I do to ensure that this place is going to help myself, right? And it is such a really, really good aspect to really have, especially in the real world, because then it's like, oh, okay, what can this place offer me if I put in the cooperation, right? And a lot of this hinges in that cooperation as well. Which is why Lovecraft uses it as an ultimatum, right? You want to be human, or you believe that you're human, so, show me that you are, right? Show me that through this cooperation, that you can be better than what you even believed last time, right? And that belief in Rev is such a strong feeling. But of course, Rev doesn't really play that card. He doesn't play that game. He's fairly defensive against the entire thing, and, his ego won't let him become vulnerable towards others around him.
Your new BFF to back you up.
You don't really have a choice anyway.
Both of these quotes, immediately, you can just immediately tell that both of these characters, Mark and Sarah, have their own kind of entire perspectives of the school and about the situation in general, right? Of course, Reb is optimistic. It's like, oh, well, even after everything, I'm still your best friend, right? You have me as your best friend, Mark, right? And Sarah is immediately nihilistic. It's like, yeah, it's not like you have a choice, right? So you got to do this, right? Because if you don't, it's going to be much harder for you anyway, right?
Anyway.
I think you're onto something.
Oh, Mr.
Bennett! Ow. Stupid freaking immortal body.
Rev! You okay, man?
Shut up! You think I want you to be worried about me? I don't! Why else do you think I tried launching myself off the roof, huh?
Right, and it's a sense of just disconnection from care, right? Which, again, we're going to see in episode 7 that is one of the big points of his character, right? He doesn't want others to worry about him because it makes it super hard, right? Again, we said before that he is fair when it comes into strategy and trying to reach a goal, right? If somebody helps him, and if it doesn't mess up his plans, they can go along with them, or they don't, right? For him, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect him personally, right? And again, that reaches into a state of empathy as well, right? He believes in this fairness of understanding what it is that he essentially has within himself, right? So he has a fairness for benefit, right? We'll call it benefit fairness, right? But a big part about him is that he believes that, like, yeah, if I put in the work and, if you want to, also reap the benefits, right, and it doesn't affect me, go right ahead. Do whatever you want, right? Again, just as much as he believes in his own agency and he believes in his own independence, he believes that everyone should have that, right? Not in, like, a really, vocal way. Like, he's never going to say that, obviously, but that is part of his belief system, that he quite believes that, like, a person, should do whatever they want to do. Right? If they're in the same situation as him, like Sarah, it's like, yeah, why not? Right? You hate this place? Go right ahead. Escape. Right? Use your powers. Break the walls. Right? Explode the building. Right? It's like, do whatever you want because he doesn't believe in a state of just pure limitation where you're not allowed to do what you want, especially if you have a different belief system or mindset, which is, again, really, really impactful and really effective.
I hate you! And this fountain! And that worthless rehabilitation class! And this even more worthless school!
He, seems upset.
Yeah.
I hate everyone at this dumb academy! You're all a bunch of moronic, juvenile delinquents! And I will sooner die than be a part of this stupid...
That's the new episode 1. But again, one of the main things about it is that he's immediately defensive, immediately angry, and again, that gives us our first look into Rev as a character, into all these characters actually, but it's such a big aspect of who he is as a person, right? And it works. it works super well to tell us that, like, yo, Rev is someone who is independent, right? He's isolated, but he also wants to be better than everyone else, right? Is it safe to say that, like, oh, he doesn't care what other people think? I would say probably not. I think he definitely has a strong interest in ensuring that everyone knows who he is and what he can do, right? He doesn't put on a performance. He doesn't, you know, he's not like Narissa, for example, as we're going to see later on. But he doesn't have a sense of ego in the sense of like a performative version of that. But he does have a more inclusive, intrapersonal aspect and attribute that he held on to for all this different times as well, right? So I definitely see this as a big part of his character and a big part of who he wants to be as a person. And yeah, even here at the end, he calls everyone delinquents, right? That you're all moronic, you all, you know, are all people who don't, you know, who don't deserve pity, who don't deserve X, Y, and Z, right? And I think that that is one of the major aspects of his entire perspective, I would say. But yeah, that will do it for episode 1, and I will see you guys in episode 2.